I've had some families that, they'll share their stories, and they are so positive, like they're so optimistic, and they're like, oh, this is going to be my year, like I'm going back to school, and you guys are helping me so much, like just by helping me receive services. And those are the stories that really like make me happy. Obviously there's some very sad ones, but I try to focus on the positive ones because those are very inspiring to other people.
Three, two, one, yeah!
After leaving the corporate 9-to-5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Meet our next guest, Emmanuel, whose dedication to making a positive impact in the lives of others is truly inspiring. With a background as a former case manager and currently serving as a communications coordinator for a nonprofit organization, he devotes his time and efforts to providing essential social services to those in need. In his role, he tackles challenging and unexpected life situations faced by individuals and families, from assisting those who have lost their jobs to supporting families struggling to make ends meet and providing supplies for their children, to offering help to those without health insurance, access to necessary health care, and aiding those facing domestic violence. His work encompasses an array of crucial support. In this enlightening conversation, we'll gain a behind-the-scenes look at the work Emmanuel does, the people he serves, and the unique challenges that come with this field of service. Prepare to be moved and inspired as we delve into his experiences, witnessing the dedication and compassion that drives him to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. His perspective offers valuable insights into the importance of empathy, patience, understanding, and support for those facing difficult circumstances. Join us for a heartfelt and eye-opening talk that sheds light on the work done to uplift and empower communities in need. Please welcome Emmanuel Morales. Hi, Emmanuel. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I don't know how to describe what you do in an eloquent way like you. So I kind of, maybe you can explain it better, but it's kind of like when people are seeking assistance, especially when they've gone through hard times, you are able, or you're like a case manager or a case manager to help them to get them through what they're going. But can you explain to listeners what you kind of do?
Well, I'm a case manager for a nonprofit organization, and we help qualified individuals or income-based with services, especially childcare, because childcare is actually, I don't have children, but it's very expensive. And so, like when we have these families that have like, 3, 4, 5 children, it starts to add up. And, like we want to give them help because obviously they are going through financial difficulties, whether it's like they've lost their job or they just can't find a job or they've had unforeseen circumstances. We try to help them as much as we can. And they can choose from different types of providers, which I didn't know when I started working there, because there's family childcare homes, there's center-based there's some center-based organizations, and there's also like some schools that have like an after-school program or like a pre-K program, which we can help pay for. But then also you can have a licensed exempt provider, which, for example, is like a family friend, a relative, or a neighbor. And people don't know that, but again, it has to be if you're eligible. And we work with families that are receiving CalWORKs and are on welfare to work.
So this is in the state of California. So CalWORKs is assistance from the government. So do you work kind of like, do you collaborate with the government or you're a branch of the government?
We're contracted through DPSS.
Okay, which is Department of Social Services, right?
Yes.
Okay. So with a lot of your cases, like you said, it's a lot of for needs for children or families with children, right? Um, and so, like for example, if can you, without obviously giving people's names and stuff, can you kind of give examples of cases you've managed or like people that you've dealt with? Because when we talked before, you actually meet with some of these people.
Yeah, so sometimes they're all we have an open door policy, so they can come and we can help them like with their paperwork, or if they need anything, any type of resources, whether it can be housing, we can like help set them to the correct agency, or we can actually help do a referral. Also we can like if they need food, we can try to direct them like where to go to get it. If they need rent assistance, we can also help with that. If they need materials for their children, whether it's diapers, we can provide those for them as well. So it really just doesn't stop with case management. We try to help them as much as we can, just because we know they're going through difficulties, and so we try to be there for them, consistently.
And when, let's say, these people come to your office and stuff, do they seem, how does their body language look? I'm curious to see, like, do they seem ashamed or like judged at all? Or, you know how sometimes it can be embarrassed to ask for help because you're not in a financially good place.
Um, well, it depends. Some people show up with their children, and some of them, when you look at them, for me, like I don't want to say like, oh, I have a good judge of character, because then that would sound like I'm judging them, and I don't want to say that or come across like that. But sometimes you get a feel of how people are, and yes, body language is typically a sign of like, like if they feel comfortable or if they're not comfortable. For the majority of the families that do come, you could just tell they are in need, and a lot of them come, smiling. Well, their children come in also, and then they're smiling, and we want to do the best that we can to help them. Some can be a little rude, because I understand that it can be a process, because I know that they're going through so much, and on top of that they have to go and fill out paperwork or deal with somebody, and I get that. So I understand, like I don't get upset sometimes like if they're rude, because I don't know what they're going through. So I try to be as understanding as I can be. And then there are some that just, they are very just grateful, and those are the ones that I love to help, because sometimes they don't even know everything that we offer, and it's important to let them know, because we want to make sure that we can help them to their path, to help get them back on their feet again.
Yeah. And I think the process and application can be so complicated for whatever, if it's, you and I, we talked before how we both lost our jobs in the past. And one of the first things you lose is health insurance. And that will make anyone freak out because you don't want to pay for just $100 for a regular checkup and not get things checked out when you're in pain, right? So even applying for that was not the easiest. And if we are we are educated with college and stuff like that, it's difficult for us. Imagine with all these families who might have a difficult time trying to understand the process and applying, but also applying for and California, it's CalFresh, which is like food stamps, EBT, and other assistance. And it's not like, I'm assuming it's not one form they fill out to get all these benefits. It's like, do they have to fill out forms for every single thing?
Yes, everything
Okay.
required form. So it's not just like it's not like, oh, one form, just check all that apply. No, it's a form for everything, really.
Yeah. And it's not like the next day they're like, okay, you're approved.
No.
Because you guys are probably backlogged with so many applications that's like, you're approved and we're going to give this to you tomorrow. Right.
It depends. Like honestly, like if they choose, for example, like for childcare, if their providers are in our network, then the approval process is fairly simple. Like it's two documents, and it can be approved. I mean, depending on, I mean, we are a little short staffed, but it contractually has to be done within 4 business days. But if if it's there in our system, it can be done that same day. But if it's not, then it could take I mean, I've seen cases that have taken months to approve, so it just really depends.
Yeah. So do some of these families or even people like single people that come in, do any of them share their story with you of how they got where they are? Or
Some do. I try to build a rapport with most of the families that I case manage, just because it's important to kind of get to know them. I don't see them just as like, a number. I try to, like see like, okay, like, how can I help them? Like, and how try to understand like where they're coming from, and then I've had some families that, they'll share their stories and they are so positive, like they're so optimistic and they're like, oh, this is going to be my year, like I'm going back to school and you guys are helping me so much, like just by helping me receive services. And those are the stories that really like make me happy. Obviously there's some very sad ones, but I try to focus on the positive ones because those are very inspiring to other people.
oh yeah, that's awesome. It must sound like feel really fulfilling, especially when someone's like, oh, thank you for helping me get to where I am today, right? It's like a Hallmark movie.
And then this like just recently though, I did have a parent that I asked, I was like, oh, I'm like, would you mind if I shared your story? Because we're trying to um share more of their stories on our social media. And they politely declined because they didn't want to, they were, being reserved about like, receiving assistance and all, and which I totally understand. I didn't like, wasn't like, oh no, like, no, but I completely understand because not everyone wants to share their information.
Right. And then you also get, I believe you mentioned to me before, domestic violence cases as well. So for services, what services do you guys offer that maybe people don't even realize is available?
Well, it's pretty much the same services. It's just that with those types of cases, they're a little bit, well, they're confidential. So, we really can't talk about them because like, they're
Mm.
because of the
And do you, okay. And so for those, it's like, is therapy, like, for example, a service that you might offer, suggest might be like, hey, we have therapy if you want to kind of navigate the situation.
we can always refer them to somebody like if they need a therapist or any type of mental health, anything related to mental health.
So how do you, with all these different cases that you have done, how do you do this work without letting it weigh you down?
That's a good question. Um, well, I lately I have been feeling like worn down, but I feel like it's because like I'm doing two jobs at once. But I remind myself that I always try to help as many people as I can because I know sounds very cliche, but I always like to leave people better than how I first found them. And so that's something that I always remind myself when I'm starting to feel a little burnt out or anything like that, because I do it, I think anyone that gets into social services, they are there to help people. And I know sometimes like it does get, you do get burned out because there's just so many cases and then you're trying to see like, okay, like, I want to help you, but then, there can be a lot of red tape. But I know I try to do the best that I can.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like high quantity work, but at the same time, the process isn't efficient as it can be, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and with this line of work that you do, what are the challenges about your job that people would probably not know about at all?
Some of the challenges,
Yeah. Or maybe people say, like, what makes work difficult that people wouldn't even think about unless they
the
worked at your
paperwork,
place.
the paperwork. That's what makes it the most challenging because there's a lot of paperwork.
Wow. And is it now like a lot of it digitalized, or is it one of those things where the volume, regardless?
Oh. So it can be for certain programs. It can be everything can be digital. But unfortunately, in some departments, no, like everything has to be done with forms and they have to be submitted. So you actually have to go through it. You have to assess a case. You have to, so yeah, that's the part that's definitely challenging because, like let's say if there's something missing and then you thought it was there, then you have to go back and get it fixed by the parent, or the applicant, I should say, and that causes delays.
Okay. So it's kind of like college application or job application where they're like, please add this. We need this information from you, income, resume, whatever. And then they forget one thing and you're like in the middle of processing and you're like, okay, I have to go back to them and then be like, hey,
Oh,
I need this paperwork from you. And then they might take another week to get it back to you if they remember that is. And then mm,
right, and also the only thing though, like when you're doing like an application online, if there's like an asterisk, it won't let you move forward. Now, like when it's like, it's paperwork, then like, no, like it's just your eyes. So, and then like somebody like your manager or something reviews it and they're like, oh, this is missing. And you're like, oh, I missed that. So then you have to go back and do the whole process.
yeah. And then you recently got promoted. Congrats to communications coordinator. Can you tell more about that and like also events that you guys do? Because I don't think people realize you guys get involved with that.
No, so we have a lot of staple events, and those are my favorite. Like ever since I started, like my intention was never to be a case manager. I just kind of like when I got laid off with my previous position, I was like, okay, like I need a job. And so like, I applied and I was like, okay, I'm like, I think I could do this, like and I did. Like I learned something new about myself. I learned that I can handle um a lot of deadlines, and I was like, okay, I'm like, okay, I feel like I must be doing something right if I'm getting a promotion. But I've always liked to be hands-on, and so like with like a lot of the events that we do, especially staple events, they're so wonderful because we get to actually meet more of the families that we help serve, and we actually get to see their faces, and like they'll let us know like how we've helped them, or like they're just so grateful to be there, and that's what really makes me happy because you get to see it right then and there.
Yeah. And can you talk about what I guess you do as communications coordinator? Because I think are you a liaison with other companies, and then also even your maybe talk about your recent event because people don't know what it looks like. One of them might look like.
So our recent event was a back to school distribution, and we distributed about like 900 backpacks for children and the community that we service, which is in the Los Angeles area. And it was so wonderful to see all of the families come, and we got to see them, and it was a hot day, so that's how we know it's like, okay, they still want to be here. And just seeing them like get their backpacks and their school supplies, and just spending time with them, to me that it was just so wonderful because you get to participate in their education, and they're going back to school, and all of that, which to me was one of my favorite times. I remember, I don't know, maybe I don't want to age myself, but I want to say that when I was in school, it would start in September. I think it was like after, it was like the first week of September, and now I feel like they go in earlier. It's like August or something like that, right?
Yeah, for me it was well, I'm from Virginia, and it was after Labor Day so when we started school. So September, early
Right.
September.
Yeah. 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 And that's how I want to say that's how I mean, it's been quite some time since I was in elementary school. But yeah, I want to say it was around that time. And now like most schools start in August, which I'm like, whoa. But then I think they get out earlier too. I'm not sure.
It's been a while,
Yeah. Yeah.
full
But
decades.
we have some, like so we do partner up with a lot of like organizations, and they'll donate materials for us, and then our staff will just get together, and we start putting things together for them. And It's really wonderful because and I also get exposed to like really cool new like back to school items like cool pens or things like that or water
Mm.
bottles.
It's so nostalgic because it's like back to school shopping.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that I used to love getting like the Goosebumps folders, like or even the Lisa Frank ones. I'm not even gonna lie, like the Lisa Frank ones,
Yeah.
like
Or even the
huge.
bookmarks.
Yeah, yeah, those are always just so much fun. But now there's so many like companies that do a lot of really cool designs um and kids really like them. So I'm that's what's important.
Um, so for people that might think, what would you say to people who might think, oh, people who are lazy, or it's people that we shouldn't have these services because people are going to abuse and rig the system to use all these benefits?
I've heard that a lot. And you know what, like there are people that do abuse the system, but there's also people that the majority of people that don't. And I feel like, yeah, okay, some people might abuse it, but it's there for people who really need it. And to me, when somebody needs any type of assistance, obviously they're asking for a reason. And if we can help with anything that we can, it's important that's why we're here. That's why we do the work that we do.
Do they ever come up to your face when you guys are at public events and stuff and say that? Or is
No,
it more like social media
no,
and
it's social
comments?
media. Yeah,
Ah,
social media. It's not ever. We don't. I don't think I've never experienced that. Because typically the parents that come to our events, they're all happy to be there, and they look forward to it. So it's never anything negative.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think in any country where it's going to have, I guess, like free services or for free benefits and that kind of stuff that are meant to help the people that are struggling, there's always going to be freeloaders. It's not just the US. So, but again, like what you said, it's like you and I have had to need services because, in the pandemic, we've seen so many people just get laid off from jobs and they've worked years, put their years into the system of like taxes and everything and stuff like that. And sometimes you get really unlucky, you know?
No,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, and that's not something I know. I never thought about it. Like I was like, oh, like like so I have never been laid off from a job. And so when that happened, I remember just being like really sad because I was like, whoa, like, but again, we were going through a pandemic, so a lot of people were going through the same thing that we were. And if anything, it just made me realize like how when we have a job, like we shouldn't take it for granted because it can be, we can lose it at any moment.
You really can with yeah, today's economy. Um, and for what would you say, what advice do you have for anyone that might be needing help or struggling, but maybe they just don't know where to start? Maybe they're embarrassed, or let's say they just lost their job, or they just got out of a really rough relationship and they are now on their own and they're struggling.
I would definitely say that they need to contact the appropriate services so they can start, whether it's like Medi-Cal, it's CalFresh, CalWorks, Welfare to Work. It's important to know, all the services that are being offered because um, information is key, and that way you can always say like, okay, like I need this, I don't need that. This is how you do that. This is how you fill out this form because nobody knows naturally how to fill that out. You learn once you are put in that
In it.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely time consuming, but I would say don't give up because, like you will find that one person who will help you. I know that, sometimes when you call, like they can be a little like just like frustrated because I get it. Like they hear all these stories and there's like sometimes you just get these repetitive questions or and this and that, and I get it. But you know what? Like sometimes there are people when you really tell them your story, like they'll understand and they will help you. how to, whether it's like filling out the paperwork or, what number to call or like how to go about the process. Like there's a lot of wonderful workers out there who actually do love their job and will help you. And to that, like I'm always grateful.
Yeah. And I think that it is, just whatever transition someone's going through, losing their job or trying to flee a relationship and they're now financially unstable. It's gonna it's a difficult transition. It takes time. And on top of that, doing all this paperwork, run into red tape. But just know that there's always assistance there to help us, to help you. That's what they're there for. It's a matter of also just like finding it, which can be hard sometimes, is because every state's different. But there's always help, and it's even when we're hitting rock bottom, there's other people that are willing to help us get up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes like we lose faith in people, but you know what? Like I always try to be a positive person. And I know that sometimes like when I felt down in the past, like um I don't know, like I believe like there are so many like yeah, like sometimes you're like, oh, like everything sucks. And then you will run into somebody and they can help change your perspective in just a matter of seconds. I know like recently I wasn't feeling that great and I was just like, like in a not so I just wasn't feeling great. And I went to a Starbucks and the barista was so nice and they're like, you know what, you seem like you're having a not so great day, and they gave me free Starbucks. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, like and they even wrote like a kind message on my cup. So I thought that that was really sweet, and it was just a reminder of like, yeah, like there's a lot of goodness in the world.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes think it has to be a grand epic event, but really it's just a little compliment or a little something like that that can really change someone's day around, or say like, oh wow, okay, it's not bad, or even just like, you know what, I feel a little bit loved right there.
Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, especially when it comes from a stranger, because it's like you think, who are they to notice me and like help me out right now? They didn't have to,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and for telling a little bit about the behind the scenes of your life and what you do. And thank you for also doing what you do and helping others.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully, there are people who will benefit from hearing my story.
And that's it for today's episode, my friend. I hope you found Emmanuel's conversation insightful and eye opening to the work that goes into helping others. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on any episodes coming up, and it will help us reach more of our vibrant community. And I'd be really helpful if you left a review over on Apple and Spotify as well. Those reviews help other people find my podcast. And remember, the fun continues over at thehappyhealingshop.com, where we keep the conversations going, and you will find tons of resources to help you on your spiritual journey, including blog posts, guides, and more. So until we meet again, always remember to shine your light brightly and to share your story, because you never know who it can give hope to or inspire to create a change in their world. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.